we can now invite our discussion to talk and comments. Maybe first, I think read the question and start and answer one by one. The questions are ready to you.
Yes, sir. We got some questions from the audience. So, so some people maybe they are confused about the gestation period of buffalo because Sama sir mentioned 400 days in somewhere and 305 days somewhere. So, what is the actual figure, sir?
See, gestation period is 10 months and 10 days. Between 305 to 310 days. I think what they must be confusing because I must have given that as a intercalving period or but as far as gestation period is concerned, it's 10 months, 10 months, 10 days or 5 days.
Okay. So there's another question: is that what is the cutoff value of somatic cell count in case of subclinical mastitis in buffalo?
In case of buffaloes,
Yeah.
For subclinical mastitis, that is the basic problem. That if you want to diagnose subclinical mastitis, you cannot depend on CMT. So what I usually do is I perform trypsin inhibitor test which I have developed on my own, and that's a very simple test which I do on X-ray film. So what I do I have got a trypsin solution which is a standard solution which have been made for Chithle area for the threshold level of antitrypsin activity, and I use that reagent and put a drop and mix one drop of the reagent and one drop of milk, and then mixture of that is put on the X-ray film. If there is no digestion, then I say it is positive for subclinical mastitis. So that is the test which we have adopted and we do. It's a very standard old test which earlier people were using in Sweden and Denmark, in Finland. So most of these countries were using trypsin inhibitor test for detecting subclinical mastitis. So that I usually do, or I go for direct somatic cell count by using Neubauer's chamber, and if it is above 100,000, then I take it as subclinical mastitis.
So there is another question: is that the subclinical mastitis is less in buffalo? So is there any genetic difference between cow and buffalo for less subclinical mastitis in buffalo?
I think the basic I don't know whether there is a genetic basis of less mastitis, but as far as acute mastitis is concerned or clinical mastitis is concerned, buffaloes do have this problem. 15 to 20% of buffaloes will have problem. Because buffaloes have a longer teeth and then they are tied and they sit under unhygienic conditions. Therefore, we find that the clinical mastitis problem is quite high. Subclinical mastitis problem probably is less because of very thickened teeth canal. Because I had shown you, in one of the slides that there are basic differences between the teeth of cow and teeth of buffaloes. And then another reason could be the milk yield, because we know that only those animals which are having higher milk yield will be the one which will be more prone for mastitis because of the trauma which will get because if you have large amount of milk which is coming out it will also be flushing lot of epithelial cells and other things, so it becomes more susceptible to infection. Genetic, of course I do not know if it has got a genetic basis.
Thank you, sir. So there's another question: is that the farmer who usually feed the wild low quality grass to buffalo, so in that case how can you treat the hypophosphatemia in buffalo?
You see, you should remember one basic difference. All those animals which are getting plant related or fodder related feed predominantly, they would always be rich in calcium. And grains are rich in phosphorus. So that is the reason in monogastric animals or birds which are fed on grain diets, they would be the one which will be having problems related with calcium. Whereas those which are being fed with fodder, they will always be richer in calcium and lower in phosphorus. Number two, the phosphorus problem is also related with mobilization. So it's a very intricate metabolism. I would not like to go into detail, but I have got lots of paper published on phosphorus metabolism in case of buffaloes, because it's different than what talk in case of human being. It's not dependent on vitamin D, not reabsorption from the renal tubule. So you have lots of other intriguing issues related to phosphorus, and that is why the requirement of phosphorus in certain areas is quite high compared to calcium. And in all those areas where you have diaphragmatic hernia and traumatic reticulitis very common, pica very common, infertility related issues are very common. We do supplement phosphorus, and I have developed one formulation for phosphorus deficiency based on my research work, which has been commercialized by Intas Pharmaceutical, and the name of the product marketed is Novizac. This Novizac is the first buffered phosphorus with nucleotides in it. It has got inosine and pyruvate in it, and that is meant to correct the carbohydrate metabolism of the RBCs to reduce hemolytic syndrome. So phosphorus, I think, even in case of cows, is a major issue, and generally veterinarians pay more attention to calcium. I think you should also pay more attention to phosphorus now.
I have a question, Diolo Bordokhali. Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
আপনি বলেন, আপনি প্রশ্ন বলেন, শোনা যাচ্ছে। হ্যাঁ,
we know heat detection in buffalo is very tough. We used a bull for heat detection, but in Chor Anchal, how can we easily detect for stress in case of insemination?
I think we understand your question, sir. But he wanted to ask that usually heat detection is very difficult in buffalo. So in Bangladesh, sometimes the buffalo are located in the island area, very remote. So how we can take a strategy for heat detection in the island area, that a remote area?
Oh, I mean, what I was talking about was the areas, which are where, farmers are having only 2 or 3 buffaloes. So they are also remote in villages. It's only, it's only observation, which is a problem. You see what happens in case of buffaloes when you tie a buffalo, you are suppressing normal sexual behavior. In all those areas where we have been able to, have buffaloes, which are let loose, allowed to, sexually express, we have found even buffaloes mounting. So it's a myth. People say that, buffaloes have silent heat. It's not. If you are really observant, if you take round in the morning and evening, you definitely find buffaloes which are which are having estrus secretion. Iodine deficiency is one culprit which might result.
But in forest area, like in forest area, like as Golachiba Potokhali, in forest there are so many but how can an artificial inseminator he detect easily to inseminate the buffalo?
I don't know about what area you are talking about, forest area. I know, because my experience is mostly with the buffaloes which are owned by farmers. So they are with the farmers. And here I'm not talking of inseminator which is detecting heat. I'm talking of farmer which is who is detecting heat and calling the paravet. So when farmer is able to detect heat and call the paravet for insemination, I don't think this is an issue. And there are areas where we are doing insemination last 20 years, and our conception rate and heat detection rate is almost similar for cows and buffaloes.
I can,
there is another,
sir,
yes, there is another question.
sir, I like
any-
to supplement. Excuse me, this is Dr.
Sorry.
Imdadul Haq. I like to supplement Professor Samad about the heat detection in southern part of Bangladesh.
Please.
You see, the,
Okay,
I thank you, Diallo Saib. I think the things is that here, because we are organizing a intensive farming, in that case, you see, normally the milking buffalo in the Bathan area, they comes in the morning or in the evening for milking. And you can really, as Professor Samath said, that you can really keenly observe the buffalo in the afternoon or in the morning during when the buffalo is coming to the shelter area for milking. And you will find really, as he mentioned, that though buffalo is a silent hitter, we call it, but basically if we have a very keen looking, then it is possible to find the heat detection in the buffalo so that you can make an EI. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would also add that in Chitale dairy, where there are around 300 buffaloes, we have been using De Laval activity meters since almost now more than 15 years. And that is basically dependent on activity profiling. And currently we are working with one of the companies here in India, developing a neck band for buffaloes, so that it will serve multi-purpose, like even rumination, number of times ruminating, number of times the animal is eating, and the orientation, resting, and all those things. And we are profiling both cows as well as buffaloes. So we find that the buffaloes which are let loose, which are not tied, their profiling is not very much different than cows. Remember, we are profiling them 24 hours. The activity profile is coming 24 hours digitally. The problem comes only when you are tying buffalo, and when you're tying buffalo with a very short leash. That poor animal is not able to sit even properly, or stand properly, ruminate properly. So there, you are going to get a lot of these differences in expression. So these are, although very minor areas, but that need attention even from the vets. To look at the leash size, whether the buffalo is comfortably sitting, buffalo is able to comfortably stand up. And another thing, in case of heat, generally we say silent heat because it doesn't make so much of noise as cow does. Cows will start making noise. Most of the time it will be like typical noise will be hearing. Buffaloes will not do that. But when you go and look at their back, you'll find estrus discharge is very prominent. And that, if you are observant, morning and evening, when animal after taking feed is sitting down, you cannot miss heat in buffalo. I mean, that is my experience.
Yeah,
Good evening,
Professor,
sir.
I have another experience. Professor Samad, I have another experience.
Please.
That if you really look this buffalo, if you must not disturb the buffalo in the morning and evening. Without disturbing, you have to keep looking at the buffalo, then you can easily identify the heat detection. So if you have to observe the buffalo in such a way that buffalo should not feel any disturbance. I'm talking about this intensive or household farming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so there is another question. Toxocara bacillarium is the number one killer of buffalo calves. Also the silent killer for buffalo in Bangladesh. What is about in India? Toxocara bacillarium problem in India.
I'm not able to hear you because your voice is getting interrupted. Can you repeat?
Okay, sir, I'm repeating it again. Deleting. Just yes. So, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Bacillarium is the number one killer of buffalo calves and also acts as a silent killer for buffalo in Bangladesh. What is about in India from your experience? Who is
Infertility.
Sir, Toxocara sir.
Hello.
parasite, sir? It's about the parasite. Toxoparasite.
Parasites.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I'm talking.
Yeah. Parasites are quite common in buffalo calves. Yeah, you're right.
Toxocara especially, sir.
Yeah. And you know that is the reason we have found that if you really want to reduce the mortality and the morbidity in case of buffalo calves, the key management practice which I have found is that you should not keep buffalo calf along with the buffalo. Many times you have a farm with 10 buffaloes, and the buffalo calf is also tied right adjacent to the mother. Then it's going to get all kinds of microbes as well as the parasites from the mother is immune to it because of age, but the calf is very much susceptible. So this is one key thing which you need to remember if you want to reduce mortality. The second is we should we have to give deworming as early as possible, say about 14 to 21 days. If you can do deworming in case of buffalo calves, and in buffalo calves usually for first deworming I still prefer piperazine. I mean you can criticize me for that, but I prefer piperazine because I find ascaris is very common in case of buffalo young buffalo calves. But after that you can switch over to other anthelmintics. But you are right, it's a big problem if you are maintaining your calves along with because when I accepted this challenge that 50% mortality in buffalo calves to be reduced to 5%, everybody thought that it's impossible. I mean, it's not, with use of medicines and things. It's basically, a good, cage housing, for buffalo calves, which is separate, good, feeding practices spread over several times. And, their body weight, their weight gain is much faster than, I have seen buffalo calves, having 1 kg gain in weight per day.
Good evening, sir.
Hello, sir.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks for your nice and informative presentation.
Thanks.
Hello,
Sorry,
sir.
I'll give the floor later, please.
Hello, Professor Samad. Hello.
Yeah, we are hearing.
Professor Samad, thank you very much for your nice presentation.
Thank you.
I am Dr. Said from Mymensingh district of Bangladesh. I am district livestock officer. I have 2 questions. Number one, what measures we can adapt for reduce mortality of buffalo calf? Number 2, how we can control brucellosis in case of buffalo?
Okay.
Understand my question, Professor?
Yeah, I understood. You have asked me 2 questions. Buffalo, how to reduce buffalo calf mortality. I think I have already mentioned about buffalo calf mortality. Common practices to be, common practices. Number 1, I have shown you, a special kind of, cage housing, for buffalo calves. Buffalo calves are to be kept dry, and away from, with good sanitary conditions. If that you are going to do, then your problem of, enteritis and pneumonia will be reduced. Number 2, as I have said, keep them separate. If you want to bring them for milking at the time of milking for letting down, it's fine. But then all other time, you should keep it separate from the mother, at least for first month, because then, by first month, they would have enough of immunity and antibodies developed against, common infections which are there in the barn. Then anthelmintics, in first 14 to 21 days, followed by another anthelmintic at 3 months and 6 months. If this you do, then most of the problems related with worms medication or worm infestation will also be reduced. Another thing is, buffalo. You have, if you are really interested in rearing, buffalo calf, you have to give more attention in first 3 months, and that is the area where most of the farmers neglect, because the feed conversion ratio in first 3 months is very high. So if you are going to push good energy, you can have very high conversion ratio. I did one experiment. In Bombay here. We have RA colony, where there are around 80,000 buffaloes in one area only. So most of the farmers used to say that our calves die. We have very high calf mortality rate. So I wanted to show the male buffalo calf rearing, how it can be done scientifically, and how you can attain by 12 months or 14 months of age, how can attain 220 240 kg weight. That was the objective. And first batch we had some issue, but second batch when we got of 50 male buffalo calves from this area, our mortality was less than 2.53%. Our average gain in weight was around 750 gram to 1 kg per day, and we could get to 180 220 kg by 12 or 4 months, simply by pushing good nutrition. So initially, good starch, protein to be fed when it is monogastric in first 3 months, then followed by good fodder and other things, and you can have buffalo calves which will come in, if it is female, which will come in heat 32 to 34 months. So it's all game of nutrition and sanitation and hygiene. It's not a game of medication and medicines. If you are able to focus on this, you can reduce the buffalo calf mortality. Now coming to brucellosis. As you know, brucellosis is intracellular infection. It's very difficult to treat intracellular infections. If you want to give antibiotics, you will have to give very long period of time. Even in human being, it's called as a refractive, because you are not able to get rid of infection, because brucella will sit in macrophage. And you don't have good drugs that will reach that will go inside the macrophage and kill the bacteria. We are coming out with a product. It's in scaling up stage, where we have developed rifampicin, which is nanoparticulate. It's a nanoparticulate where it is entrapped into a nanoparticle of around 500 to 600 micron size, and that if it is given intravenously, it will target only to the macrophage. So that is something which is coming up, which we may come up in next 1 year or so. Otherwise, if you read books, there are two strategies which is suggested. First strategy is diluted brucella vaccine, as a treatment. Even if you read Blood Henderson, even Blood Henderson also mentions that you can dilute brucella vaccine, 1 in I think 1,000 to 5,000. That's some dilution which is given, and that diluted vaccine, if you give, it will take care of the infection, because it will push up the antibodies, and then the animal will get rid of the infection. The second thing is vaccination. In India, we are starting a vaccination program in buffalo calves, or even in cow calves. So that is a cotton strain 19, which is an improvised strain which is being marketed here in India now, and that is to be given between up to 8 months of age. Up to 8 months of age you can give. It's only one-time vaccine that is to be given, but that strategy is done in case of farms where you have found that there is a brucella infection and you want to protect other animals. If you want to give treatment, there are people who have tried terramycin IV initially for 5 days, then followed by long-acting drugs, and then they have also tried drug like azithromycin, clindamycin. Those are very, very expensive. It's very long drawn process. So you'll have to either cull such buffaloes, because that is possible in your country. If you want to clean up your herd, get rid of an infected, But while getting rid of infected in Brucella testing, also keep in mind that you should not depend on only one test. You should do two different type of tests, and unless two different types of tests are positive, you should not label it as positive. Otherwise, likely to label lots of negative also, as positive, and good buffaloes or good cows, will be getting eliminated. So that much care, you must take.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So, sir, we have our panelists at back. So now I would like to request Professor Samsudin sir to make comments or any questions to Professor Abdul Samad sir. Samsudin sir.
So, thank you,
Okay,
Mizan.
thank you,
Sorry, at the beginning, my mic was muted, but now I managed to unmute. Thank you, Professor Abdul Samad. It's a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. Despite its length, I think it was valued to have that long. And I learned many new things, especially let me pick up the village-based metabolic profile. And I believe if that can be combined with this ration balancing and farmer field school, it really could have a great impact. And I endorse all the technical details, so I will not go through that. And I had some chat with Mizan when I was setting. I think all the information in that has been cited by Professor Samad about the buffalo, the milk, the production, I cannot agree more. I think I agree with all of these. Having said that, I have been asking questions for many long time. I'm trying to look into it from a little different direction, because until now we have been in more on the buffalo production, buffalo health, but coming from a different direction, that despite we have all the good points, why is not buffalo getting popular in Bangladesh? I don't know the answer, but I will raise a few issues for your food for thought. And of course, there could be that let me go a little very shortly to 1990s, when the agricultural mechanization started in Bangladesh, and the cattle and buffalo both were kind of relieved from the drought power. It took those of my age and my professional age will agree with me that it was really a decline, both in the number and attention to both buffalo and cattle. But from the beginning of this century, the cattle has got a very good attention on both milk production and the meat production. And thanks to India to not allowing cattle to come into our Bangladesh, that has given a positive boost. And our farmer has done a great job since 2015, and we are getting on that. But now the question is then, why the buffalo did not get the momentum and this transformation? Of course, the answer could be as a knowledge gap, because from our academics until the farm, I have no doubt to admit, we were more like a cow doctor, but buffalo was always putting aside, and at the end of the day, well, buffaloes are like the cow, which is not true, and we learn again from Professor Samad today. One thing that is, well, I would like to mention, I will be quick, short, because I know the time limit. One thing I would like to point out here, despite India and Bangladesh are very close neighbors, and we share many culture, but the food habit, we are very different. So, because if you see here, the animal protein is dominated by meat and fish, which is not the case in India. It's animal protein, a huge percentage of animal protein comes from milk. So the buffalo, those of us who we are working, I would strongly recommend that to target two value chain, which is both dairy as well as the beef, because that is how the consumers are looking at. What we see in the value chain, we do not have a buffalo meat in Bangladesh, except in Chittagong. I think you will agree with me, because all meat are the cattle meat. So whatever statistics we are getting is not really correct statistics. What I'm saying very explicitly, we need a value chain that, okay, this is the buffalo meat sold in the market as a buffalo meat. Similarly, we do not have any value chain or buffalo milk, despite all the good character. I know even in India, this not the buffalo milk doesn't have separate value chain except few niche product. But as I said, India protein comes from milk, so there the people are buying the milk. But here in Bangladesh, and then there is a price incentive, both in the cooperative as well as in the private sector, for the buffalo milk. But I think Pritom is here, and I don't know if he's still here, will agree with me. In Bangladesh, neither the cooperative nor the private sector has any milk price more than 6%. So buffalo farmers are not getting the advantage of having high percentage of fat. And similarly, as it is nearly 1.8%, 8 times of the cow milk, they are not getting the price of the protein. So at the end of the day, when a buffalo farmer comes to a cooperative or to a private chilling plant with 2 liters of milk, he was supposed to get nearly, let's say, price of a 3.5 liter of milk, but it's not getting. So that could be an issue. We have answered, we have discussed quite a few on the technology. I think I agree totally with Professor Samad. There is not really any technology difference. You can copy many of the cattle technology. If you look at the European buffalo dairy farms in Italy or in Hungary, or even if you go to Brazil, because these are 2 other buffalo colonies where both dairy and meat has been developed. They have kind of copied the technology. They are using this the paddock system, the milking machine, and of course they also did a good breeding selection. But I do agree that buffalo does have artificial insemination issue, not with the conception rate, because I have some experience of working in Nepal, but not that much in India, working in FAO. The conception rate to me looks good once the cow is detected in the heat. But what does happen, especially in a kind of extensive and semi-extensive management, many buffaloes are not detected in estrus. And I'm talking about scale up. I'm not talking really in a pilot. And if you look at the literature, only few large study you find where thousands animals data were summarized are mostly from Italy and from Brazil. And the studies are mostly with the ovulation synchronization. As I say, I mean, I do not mind despite it is expensive, but if the farm is like the one that we saw in Professor Samad's presentation, is an intensive farmer, good investment, then if the technology adds values and pays at the end of the day, I think this will be a good choice. So again, I know I have some other colleagues and also my teacher, Professor Omar Farouk, who has spent nearly all of his life on the buffalo. They will talk and I learn more. So I do not want to take their time. Again, thank you so much, Professor Samad. And I think the key message that I would like to see is to see the total picture and really try to understand why buffalo did not catch the momentum in Bangladesh, and why, and I would work more on the farmer and really go and listen to them and ask especially the 2 value chain, the both milk and the beef, that sell buffalo milk as a buffalo milk, sell buffalo meat as a buffalo meat, and work on that and use the market as a driver, not like only pushing products and talking about the production. If the market sucks the product, the farmer know how to make the production. They have proven it with the cattle, especially when there was quite a drop in the supply chain. Thank you so much, and I stop here again. Thank you for inviting me. and I will be happy to answer if there is any question to the comments that I have made. Thank you, Mijan. Thank you, Professor Samad, and my colleagues and teachers.
Thank you, Dr. Shamsuddin. I think I would like to add only one point to a very good comment which you have appended to my presentation. You are very right. If the farmers are not going to get differential price or prime price for buffalo milk, then they would be definitely preferring cows than buffaloes. Because of ease of handling. Because of so many other issues. Which farmers otherwise feel feel for buffaloes. Even for purchasing buffalo, the purchase price of buffalo is twice that of cow. So farmer will think that why not purchase 2 cows rather than 1 buffalo if he's not going to get differential price. The reason why buffalo is flourishing well in India is because of non-culling of cattle, and that's why in all those states where the cow protection laws are implemented very heavily, those are the areas where buffaloes are flourishing. It's like shifting of farmers from cows to buffaloes, because they can cull calves, they can cull even uneconomical buffaloes. And second thing, as I have said, is the differential way. What Bangladesh can do is instead of marketing this buffalo milk as a liquid milk, the university should develop a some kind of small technology of converting this into mozzarella cheese, and teach farmers to convert all buffalo milk to mozzarella cheese, and some value chain, so that it goes for pizza houses. There, I think the value addition to farmer will be much higher compared to cows, and that probably would act like a flip. That is what has happened in Italy and other areas where people have started focusing on buffaloes, even Brazil, because there they don't market liquid milk of buffalo. Entire milk is converted into mozzarella cheese. So that is something which needs to be looked at in Bangladesh.
Sir, Assalamu alaikum. I have a question, please.
Yeah, please go ahead, Dr. Firoza.
Dr. Firoza. In our country, hemorrhagic septicemia is a great problem for buffalo production. Large number of buffaloes die in every year. What are you thinking about this problem to develop buffalo dairy chain? And what is the best treatment of a hemorrhagic septicemia? Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your nice presentation. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, you see, in India, we have been able to basically control 90% of hemorrhagic septicemia and black powder cases. And that is, by vaccination. So every year we start vaccinating, and this vaccination is done in the month of, May up to first week of June, before the onset of rains, because onset of rains is the one when you start getting outbreak of hemorrhagic septicemia. So you can control, but we have got number of cases of pasteurellosis, and I think they were not because of Pasteurella multocida, but because of Pasteurella hemolytica. And Pasteurella hemolytica, which classically in Western countries they would classify as a shipping fever. But it's not a shipping fever over here. It's it's like hemolytica, but which is resistant to common antibiotics. So there it poses problem. Earlier we were using sulfa for treating cases of HS, but I think sulfadimidine is no more a drug of choice over here. All these third generation and second generation cephalosporins are extremely good. One more thing you should add while treating cases of hemorrhagic septicemia is diuretic, because pulmonary edema is the one which is causing death, because there is a huge accumulation of fluid in the alveoli, in the lung alveoli, and you would like to get rid of. And then you also have edema which is getting edema near the mandible, which is also going to give pressure. So corticosteroid to control pulmonary edema, then diuretic again to get rid of accumulated fluid, and a good choice of antibiotic which is to be repeated. This is one thing which we generally don't do, is that depending upon the half-life, you have to administer it more frequently, because all respiratory infections are otherwise very difficult to get rid of. You'll always have some residual infections, so you must treat it at least for 3 to 5 days, even if animal is recovered. And then if the drug is to be given twice a day, you have to give drug twice a day. In my practice, if I find that you are not getting good results from conventional antibiotic, I usually use clindamycin as a antibiotic of choice, along with diuretic, like furosemide, Lasix, and prednisolone, as an anti-inflammatory at a higher dose rate. That is the strategy I usually follow for HS. But vaccination, I think, vaccination, I think of, an additional booster whenever there is any outbreak of HS. But I think for this question, your department and your academicians from Bangladesh would be in a better position to, give a reply as to, what should be the schedule of HS vaccination and whether it is to be repeated, after some months. That, of course, depends from country to country, and they would be able to give you a better answer for it. Thank you.
Can I request Dr. Qazi Imdadul Haq sir to say something? Sir, are you here?
Yeah.
Okay, sir. So now we can start.
Thank you, the Professor Samad, for his nice presentation. In fact, I enjoyed this whole presentation. I think it covers almost all areas. So it is a very nice presentation, and I have learned many things from this presentation. You see, this buffalo production system, I think we have a different production system, and the intensive production system is very, very few, but we have a, how do we call this, Bathan system, the Diallo, Firozpur, or somewhere else there is mentioning. But with this forum, I think almost all buffalo related people from Bangladesh is here. I would like to request all of my colleagues or friends that our today's presentation was with the household buffalo system, production system. So in this case, I think as it is a household production system, this presentation, I think it is very nice for us, because our buffaloes should be kept initially with the Bathan system, but we have to bring them slowly to the household system. And from our Laltir, we also trying to make it as how we can bring it in the household system. So that is one of the important issue, as Professor Samsuddin mentioned, that why buffalo is not popular in this country. I have the same question. And the answer I don't know, but I guess it that we did not give really the attention to this high valued animal in the long time. This may be one of the reasons, but as the other reason, the buffalo milk and meat does not get value in the value chain of our whole system. And I have one idea that why buffalo meat is not popular here in this country. We know, I think all of us here, we know that buffalo meat is very, very good if it is a tender meat. But what is the reason? I guess that all the buffaloes are slaughtered after finishing their whole life at the end of the time. That time the meat is sticky and it's very tough and everything. So the people find that this buffalo meat is not good. But if it is a young and tender meat, I tried several times. It's a very excellent meat. We know all of you. So this may be the one of the reason, but I don't know. I have the same question with Professor Samsuddin. And we, the country people, we have to think on it, how we can make this buffalo popular. Please come forward with this. And some issues, the Professor Samad mentioned that about this frequent milking. Frequent milking increase about 10% milk. I think it's a new thing to me, because we normally milk the buffalo 2 times. But if it is more than 2 times, if it increase, as you have mentioned, the secretion system, I think it is a new to me, and I will try to my own farm and an experimental case. The buffalo which gives 5, 6, 7 liter milk, we will, or 10 liter milk, we like to try to practice it, how it works. Thank you very much this issue. And another issue you have mentioned, there's a dry matter intake with the heat tolerance. Well, in Bangladesh, I think even within this small area, you see the northern part and southern part, there is a heat differences, and the dry matter intake due to the high heat and high humidity reduces. And I think that is a good suggestion. You have mentioned it here. And about this pregnancy rate, you have mentioned that 35 to 40%. And in our farm, we have synchronization and different way we tried. And I think Professor Juana is here. She is with us, also working with us. And we have the same experience. We never get it more than 40%. So I don't know really how to increase it. If you have any suggestion how to increase this, that would be the helpful, because it's a long gestation period, long life animal. That is one of the disadvantages of this type of animal, particularly buffalo. And another problem you have mentioned, this metritis. Do you have any suggestion how we can reduce it? That's one of the questions to Professor Samad. And with this few points, and I also have a new idea that iodine requirement, you have mentioned that. I did not know that it is, I think it's a good information, particularly the calcium phosphorus, we know that, but the iodine part, it was basically unknown. To me particularly, maybe my colleagues may know it, many of us. So thank you very much for this nice presentation. I have 2 or 3 questions to you. If you have time, then I like to hear of this. And thank you, the organizer, really, Professor Mizan and others, to invite me in this seminar and having a scope to learn more about this buffalo of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Samad sir, can you, sir, please say something shortly? Thank you, sir. Samad sir.
I think I'll okay. There are 2 questions, addressed to me. One is about endometritis. I know endometritis is used to be a very big problem in the farms, where I was associated. Remember, I was talking about that Chitale area and the Gokul area, so that by itself covers around 900,000 buffaloes. So, and I had the data of around 60,000 buffaloes of insemination, milk production, health, treatment, everything I get. So I was talking from realistic big data which is available to me. Endometritis is quite common in case of buffaloes, and basically the reason is that, I mean, in India, most of these buffaloes are tied on a concrete floor, and they are tied, and they don't have a separate area for calving. So even the calving would take place there itself, and the animal will sit. Animal will urinate, defecate, and sit. Cleaning and other things are not as prompt and as frequent as it is required, and therefore the involution gets delayed. So that is the reason in that area we started a strategic treatment, and the strategic treatment was immediately after pasteurization for 3 to 5 days give a protective umbrella of antibiotic, and that I learned from maternity homes. I had quite a few of doctor friends, my colleagues, and when we were discussing, they told me that as a preventive, they give antibiotic to women after delivery, so that if there is any contamination and infection, that is taken care of. And another thing they were using very frequently was ergometrine, methargine kind of injection for controlling bleeding, because their belief, their observation was that if you are not able to control bleeding, which is very likely to happen in delivery, then the growth of bacteria, other related problems would be higher. So combinedly, about I think 2 milligram of methargine injection, which comes to around 40 ml of methargine human ampules, because that one ampule is 2 ml. So 20 such ampules, 40 ml, and that I give slowly over a period of time. You can also give it intramuscular if you want, a subcut, or you can also give intravenously, very slowly, along with if you want to get rid of the the uterine discharges, you don't want placenta and other things to get accumulated. An oxytocin injection again to be given slowly intravenously, so that you can evacuate the uterus. So this strategy we started following, and we could reduce the endometritis problems to a large extent, rather than treating it when already there is an issue. So for endometritis, I would suggest that in areas where you feel that the hygienic conditions at the time of calving is not going to be perfect, there resorting to a strategic treatment is much better, because we have found that in all these cases where there is endometritis, there is a metastatic infection to lungs as well as to udder. So it's a very high likelihood that such buffaloes or such cows will also end up with pneumonia, as well as end up with mastitis. So if you are doing strategic treatment, you are covering it from both the sides. You are covering even pulmonary infections as well as other infections. But then I know there will be a logistic problem when you're talking of smallhold farmers. Farm, it is possible, but even there also we taught our AI technicians to visit at least 3 times, because we send him message every day to go and visit and give this injection, and data comes to us for tracing, so we know that this particular treatment has been given. So this is one thing which you can try. Another thing, you can talk to your mineral mixture, those companies which are marketing mineral mixture, and I tried over here in India, and I tried to convince them not to use potassium iodide in mineral mixture, but shift to potassium iodate, which is a stable iodine. That would solve problems, because otherwise getting potassium iodate from outside and then adding a few milligrams of iodate daily is going to be a big logistic issue. Or you can use highly iodized salt, common salt, which is iodized, and in all common salt, iodized is potassium iodate and not potassium iodide. So that is the advantage. So these are the 2 suggestions I wanted to give here. As far as the value chain is concerned, I think you do have in neighborhood Thailand, China, and all those countries, those who prefer buffalo milk. So I'm not sure how much of buffalo meat is exported from from Bangladesh to these countries, whereas India, it's worth billion dollar of buffalo meat export. So even in that could become a very good incentive for the farmers to rear male buffaloes, for purpose of veal or for purpose of beef, and you can have traceability, and with traceability the value addition to your veal is going to be much higher. And there are very right now, time, because of time constraint, I'm not able to give you the details of what I had done for male buffalo calf rearing. That was a project which I had done, and we spent something like around 14,000 rupees for rearing a buffalo calf up to age of 14 months. And the weight was 240 kg, so the income was 150 to 200 times more. In India, buffalo farmers earn more from selling the buffalo for meat purpose than from milk. So meat has become so important because of this export and lot of export related slaughterhouses. So this is one area where Bangladesh can focus.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir, very much. Thank you very much. So, at this, can I request Professor Kobul Islam Khan to say something shortly, sir? Please help us because we have limited time. Professor Kobul Islam Khan, please focus on the things that are not covered by Professor Samsudin sir and Imdadul sir. Professor Kobul Islam Khan.
Thank you, Professor Mizan. First of all, I would like to thanks Professor Abdul Samad for his nice and informative presentation. And I could learn and enlightened about the buffalo production and research on the buffalo in India. And we know the climatic factors are impacting both in global and local subsistence production systems. And in our country, buffalo is a negligible species because it has some drawbacks. In Bangladesh, the average milk production of buffalo is reverted buffalo 2 to 3.5 liter, and sometimes 1 to 1.5 liter. And we don't have any specific breed for the milk production and meat production for the buffaloes. I heard the comments from the Professor Professor Samsudin sir and Dr. Imdadul Haq, and therefore I am not going to comment about this. I have a simple query on that you mentioned in your presentation that you are rearing the Murra and Meshana breed. I have a question that what strategies you followed to choose the breed in India? And another is that in our country, we are rearing buffalo for milk and traction purpose mainly. In our market, I also agree with Professor Samsudin sir and Dr. Imdadul Haq that we cannot see the buffalo meat, and our is mainly extensive system, and nowadays some commercial farmers are coming with the buffalo rearing. And in the commercial farming, how we could formulate the ration for the buffalo production, and what are the milk products are available in India? Milk product of buffalo is Indian market are available. And thank you all with this. And I would like to thanks again Professor Abdul Samad for his nice and informative presentation, and Professor Mizan and Professor Ahsanul Haq to giving me chance to say something. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Kabirul. Regarding the breed, I think we have Murra and Mehsana. These are the two breeds which are classified as better milk yielder than others. but those have become right now quite expensive. And the breeding tract is in north of India. There's Haryana, Punjab, and western Uttar Pradesh, and therefore transportation cost and other things are very high. So that is the reason now a lot of farmers are shifting to local clones of different breeds, like I mentioned, Nagpuri buffalo, Pandarpuri buffalo. So those kind of buffaloes which are cheaper than Murrah and Mehsana, and I mean the milk yield is also around 60 to 70% of Murrah Mehsana. Then Murrah Mehsana is more common in peri-urban area, whereas in villages, because their frame is very large, and therefore their diameter requirement is also large. So generally now farmers in rural areas are not preferring Murrah and Mehsana. They prefer either Jafrabadi or they prefer Surti. There is also one more buffalo which is called Bunny. Bunny means actually it's a nondescript. Bun means forest. So those are coming from the forest area of Gujarat. So they are short statured, long horn, but they are quite sturdy. They have less of disease problems and other things, and medium milk producer, and they are also the cost of purchase is also less. So many people are also now preferring that. As far as adaptability is concerned, there are a lot of farmers who have complained that Mehsana and Murrah, after transportation from long distances, do not perform well, at least for the lactation in which they have been brought, and therefore many people are not preferring long transportation, and they are all shifting to rearing heifers in the farm itself and replacing it. So this is about the breed. I think the second question the second question was about differential pricing and other thing. See, in India, I don't know what is the status in Bangladesh. This A1 A2 issue has caught up with a lot of educated people, and you have a lot of discussion forum where people are talking about A2 milk, its advantages, and how A1 is poisonous. All these kind of discussions are taking place, and there are many people who are taking up very seriously A2. Now buffalo milk is A2 100%. When it comes to cows, you have you have 60 to 70% A2 and rest A1 depending upon the gene frequency. Whereas they say that in Zebu cattle, Zebu cows, around 90% are A2 and 10% are A1. Whereas buffalo 100% are A2. So now, National Dairy Development Board and Amul has come up with a separate pack of buffalo milk, marketing as A2 with a differential marketing. So this is something, if this has caught the imagination of educated people having good income, and they're ready to pay more, you can market it for as a A2 milk. See, marketing is a tactic which need to be focused. Here in India, there are farmers who are having crossbred cows, and they are selling milk 6 times to 7 times higher than what the cooperative are doing, simply by giving traceability that they are not using chemical, it is organic milk, they don't use medicine, and the animals are maintained in health, and then the cold chain is maintained. So with that they are able to get a good good value addition to the milk, because they are serving the community by saying that this will be fed to your children. So children should not be having contaminated milk with residues and other things. So all these kind of things are also possible with buffaloes as well as cow milk, which need to be tried in Bangladesh, especially in the metro areas where paying capacity of people is good. So this is what I wanted to convey.
So can I request Professor Ziana to say something? And please, I humbly request to be precise, because we have to be, the time is shorter. Professor Ziana.
Oh, Assalamu alaikum, all participants, veteran scientists, and government officers, students, and fellows. I must thank Professor Dr. Abdul Samad for your nice and great presentation indeed, because you have mentioned some technical points of buffalo raising, especially in comparison to cow. That's why I must thank you to give this nice presentation. I endorse Professor Shamsuddin, my teacher. He is the pioneer in the, I am a therogenologist and he is from my department. And he first started some work on buffalo reproduction in different areas of Bangladesh. And I also endorse Dr. Amdad, ED of Lalti, that he has also mentioned some important things here. First of all, I want to mention here that we must come out from the word with buffalo, the negligible, because I studied in Italy, and you know the Italian mozzarella cheese is world famous and economically very sound. But unfortunately, during my husband PhD was on buffalo reproduction. So during his study, I found that they also used this term negligible in Italy. So I think now it is time to come out from this word negligible. Very recently, I have completed two projects simultaneously. One was on cattle and one was on buffalo. What I found during my activities, that we can compare now buffalo with our high-yielding Frisian cows in terms of silent heat presentation, in terms of heat stress presentation, like this. And if I compare our own, we don't have own, but what we call our native breed, there is no significant difference in terms of reproductive parameters and production parameters that buffalo breed, crossbreed we have in Bangladesh, Mora cross, Nili cross, and our indigenous cross. And you know, our buffalo raising system is very different in different areas. We commonly follow the Bathan system, but this Bathan system also varied according to the areas. Some follow the Bathan system in rainy season, some follow the Bathan system in dry season. So in Bangladesh, we don't have a concise figure on buffalo raising. But what I think, I think Professor Abdul Samad also agree with me that in our country or in the Indian subcontinent, now our research focus on buffalo adaptation that you have just mentioned just before now, that we have to look, we have to give focus on the buffalo adaptation and what buffalo are doing in our Bathan system. It is very unfortunate, as far as I know, we don't have, I generally working on the reproduction, but I don't have the general data, how their system working, how their digestive system, how their other system is working. It is very important now in our country to define our buffalo characters in terms of feeding, in terms of its preventive measures, in terms of its immunology, and in terms of its overall marketing value. And very recently, I found a market value chain study that was done by the Gramin Unnayan Sangstha. They are working on buffaloes of Bhula. But not one study is not enough to design a strategic plan to raise buffalo in Bangladesh. I just want to know from Professor Abdul Samad that in this regard, what do you think? How we can initiate our activities to make a common strategy with this buffalo differing with their raising system in Bangladesh? You know, I visited CIRB, your Haryana Institute. It is wonderful. I visited several farms in Haryana, and they have changed my mind, my looks, that in Bangladesh, we think that a buffalo need water to raise. But when I visited India, I found that no, buffaloes don't need water. So in this regard, I would like to know from you that what should be our strategies to take a common start a common initiative on our this different raising system existed in Bangladesh. And thank you again, Professor Mijan, for inviting me to say something in this August gathering. Thank you, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz. Thank you very much. I think there are two questions that have been asked. One is what should be the strategy in Bangladesh to stimulate buffalo farming. From my experience, I would say that in Bangladesh, you should go for a semi-incentive type of farming, rather than big farms, with 300 or 500 buffalo farms, because then you end up with all kinds of managerial problems, questions of fodder, etc. So unless you have a company which is ready to invest a lot of money in it, there of course incentive intensive farming would be good. I find the herd size between 20 to 50 is a very comfortable herd size, and when farmers go beyond 50 herd size, they start having problems of high density problems related to feeding, manager related problems. So you could identify certain areas, because you also want to invest in technologies. You want to roll out certain technologies, value addition, product, insemination and things. So having say strength of around 500 to 1,000 buffaloes in one area with different farmers, having a herd size of 20 to 50. So that could be one strategy which you can adopt. And that was the strategy which was adopted in 1950s in India with the help of New Zealand. New Zealand, invested a lot of money in India on developing, peri-urban dairies because they realized that long distance transportation of milk will add to the problems, and even in India there are a lot of people who still want warm milk. They don't want pasteurized milk, they want fresh milk which is coming from the farm. So then it becomes easier if you have in peri-urban area such kind of colonies, we call it, like we have a RA colony. So you could have a milkshed area where you have around 1,000 buffaloes which are spread in say one or two villages. There you can invest in AI technician. If you want you can invest in even in community milk parlor, so that they can also bring buffaloes for milking to the milk parlor rather than milking themselves if there is a problem related with labor. There are lot of such community farming efforts in Kerala, in Karnataka, where people are going for a common kind of housing system where it becomes easy to share space for 5 or 10 cows, and then you have a community parlor which everybody shares. You have a vet and a para-vet who is available, so insemination is done when the animal is brought for milking. So all those things become logistically very easy to perform. Of course you will have to look at what option I have proposed to you. Look at the logistic issues related to Bangladesh, because I'm not very well aware whether such a system culturally will fit in, because it also has to do a lot of with culture. There has to be cooperation between the farmers, then only these kind of things work. Even in Goa now, we are working with with Goa Department of Animal Husbandry, where we are developing a milkshed area on the similar lines. Rather than having 2 animals in one corner, another 2 animals in one corner, you cannot give servicing, you cannot give technical advice to such far off animals. So bring them at least in a certain concentrated area where you can pool them at one place. They can have their own land, they can develop their own fodder. Fodder can be packed at silage and brought to the farm. They do feeding, they do everything, but there are certain common facilities that is provided. So this is one strategy which you can look at. And while doing this, also look at the market and unless and until you are going to have a differential pricing, this will not be economically feasible. So therefore, you should look at mozzarella cheese or some other kind of product. Like we have buffalo. From buffalo we have Shrikhand. I don't know whether Shrikhand is popular in Bangladesh, or some kind of sweets which is made from buffalo milk. If that can have a differential value addition, that could be tried. You can even look at male buffaloes for veal purpose, for purpose of exportation. Like Dr. Imdadul mentioned that you got to have 12 months to 14 months age buffalo to be slaughtered for meat purpose. Then it's very good, like veal, very tender meat, and you won't be able to differentiate between the veal and this 12 months or 14 months. So that is something which we need to look at. We have never looked at buffalo as a beef animal. And I think beef as an area of technical management has been neglected in this particular area. It's always spent animal, which is not useful, is going for meat purpose. So that need to change, because if people are ready to pay for good quality protein, then probably they'll be able to pay for good beef also. Another thing which I have been able to work on since last 8 months, that was a very simple issue, but I don't know why it was neglected all the time. See, in India, what people used to buy animals after calving. After calving, 7 days or 10 days, the cow or the buffalo is purchased, and along with the calf, it is transported 600 kilometers, 800 kilometers. So you can imagine what kind of stress the cow or the buffalo is going to have. So I have been able to slightly change the orientation and tell them that okay, you should buy an animal when it is advanced pregnant, but in transportation age. So like 7 months or 6 months or 7 months. So buy animal at that point of time, bring animal to your farm, so that you also have 2 or 3 months for animal to get acclimatized to your farm, acclimatized to the people over there. You can also do good feeding, and then you will have good milk in that lactation. Otherwise, they would buy a cow or a buffalo. The owner would vouch and say that it is giving 20 liters of milk, but you buy that cow, transport it to your site, and then you find it is only giving 10 liters, and your whole calculation goes wrong. So this is again one area. I don't know how the animals are purchased in Bangladesh right now, but if it is same like in India where they are being purchased after calving along with the calf, I think that need to be changed.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I think it is getting long and long. So at this point, can I request Dr. Shafiq Rahman to say something or to ask something very briefly? Dr. Shafiq Rahman.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Professor Abdul Samad, for your nice presentation. Actually, it's more than 3 hours, so I don't have much question, just one observation. So we are learning from internet, learning from books, learning from seminars, symposium, learning from this type of training. But problem is we are learning every day, but we are not implementing any issue. Number one, as a presentation, we learn the calf should not keep with the dam. I mean, just after calving or after weaning. This parameter is very important for calf. I mean, the buffalo calf to stop the calf mortality. I have one experience in the American dairy. So American dairy, we have also the buffalo, and our calf mortality is 0. Because we separate the calf just after calving and keep separate until weaning. So this type of intervention, this type of parameter should be followed. So one by one. In Bhola area, our one secretary, ex-secretary, Sir Nazmul Sir, I don't know, I'm not sure he is in online. He has a lot of buffalo. I am not sure he separate the calf just after calving. So Professor Abdul Samad, thank you once again. We are learning day by day from your presentation, and hopefully we will learn in future. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. I think one of the things which needs to be done in the academic institutes, especially, because in India also I found it, a very big gap, between the education we give to our students. We teach them lots of medicine, use of drugs, but we generally don't tell them finer management points.
Right.
Therefore, invariably you will find that when a vet goes to a farm, he'll wear a cap of a doctor. And as he is wearing a cap of a doctor, his all solutions would be drug based.
Right.
But these finer points, like don't maintain calf near the mother, sanitation is important, feeding from bottle is not needed. I think these things need to be taught, and we need to have a good program in first year and second year, where the students should be involved in actual management.
Right.
Otherwise, even in when I was dean, I was very harsh on the livestock production departments, because I found that the students were being taken for a round, observational round, rather than working in the farm. So what I had done, we had a course in livestock management. So I used to call students at 5:30 in the morning to farm, and
Right.
even though I was dean, I used to make it a point to pay a surprise visit to a farm 30 kilometers away from my office and my home. I used to go at 6 o'clock, 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and visit there to find out whether the students are coming or not coming. I had made it compulsory that for 2 hours they will come, they will be given work, they will be doing work, and then they will be feeding animals. They will be telling them that calf can be feeding of calf with milk bottle, catch hold of calf and give milk bottle. But I tell you, if you don't do it yourself, you won't be able to do it anytime. So
Right.
practical training of our boys and girls in colleges is extremely important. And number two, we should shift from the current lecture mode to the exploratory mode, because 2 years back I was in Guelph, same Ontario Veterinary College, and I found that lectures are not there. It's mostly self-exploratory. Students are going to going to farm, going to hospitals, coming out with those and then while doing this, I remember I'll take just small 2 minutes to finish my emphasis why this is important. You see, I had asked students, they were having agriculture subject, fodder development, and then I had asked them to I had allotted them 1 acre of land to a group of 5 students, and then I told them that this is your land, and now I'll not tell you what is to be cultivated. Now you have to go and find out what fodder you would like to cultivate, what practices you would like to do. Only thing is, in a seminar you convince us why you want to do that. So full freedom given to you, all inputs will be given. And then we also told them DVDing is so, but our assistant professor, he was asking them to keep on doing weed elimination. So he was asking boys to go, there is a weed, remove that. And then suddenly I found that for 1 week students were not coming. So I just wanted to find out why it is happening. I asked students, they said, sir, daily we have to do same work. He's asking us to remove weed and we are not meant as a labor to weed. So then I said, okay, I'll come next day to farm and then we'll sit and decide. So next day I sat with them. I said, this is not a labor work we would like you to do. We want you to take out weed, identify those weed, identify the species, identify from where they must have spread, take their length. One which is of higher length is the one which has come first. So find out from where it is. So give them some technical understanding of why these are doing things, and then they were very happy to do these things. So making things technical in farms, especially when they come, when you would like to take practicals from the students, they should get involved from technological and stimulating point of view. They should think that it is intellectually stimulating because they are being challenged to do some work which is an intelligent work. if that is done, I think, a lot of our boys, we would be able to convert them into good managers also, and they will be, really useful to the industry. Thank you very much.
We continue for some minutes more. Hello, sir. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. There is still some person there to talk. I think we have to. Sorry, we have to finish it faster. Dr. Hiranmay Vishwas. Dr. Hiranmay Vishwas, can you say this very shortly? Dr. Hiranmay.
Thank you, sir, for giving me the chance. My humble respect and thanks to Professor Samad sir for his nice presentation, and all of you panelists. I would like to thank Adar Health Bangladesh project to arrange such a fruitful program. Hope it will be a very good effort to change our traditional nomadic or Bathan system buffalo rearing. Though my queries get answers from Professor Shamsuddin sir and Professor Imdad sir, just I would like to add few words for your kind information. Just few lines, few minutes. Most of the buffaloes of Bangladesh are still reared in a traditional nomadic system. Only about 5% are reared in household buffalo farming system. It is true that this system of buffalo rearing is facing various obstacles at present, such as lack of high productive breed, free pasture land, climate change, natural disaster, tidal bore, fresh water, etc. Having been posting on the coastal region for almost a decade and working with buffalo from that experiences, I think it is the time to bring the buffalo back to household rearing system gradually. It is difficult task to change system through which buffalo Bathan owners are habituated. Governments, NGOs, and private entrepreneurs should come forward to save this black gold in this situation. It's a turning situation of buffalo in Bangladesh. Thank you very much. Thanks again, Professor Samad sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I think we have our last person. Dr. Gautam Wardev is not here, I think. Gautam, are you here? Dr. Gautam? I think he is not here. Khalil Rahman is here. Dr. Khalil is here. No, if he is not here, I think. Yeah, Khalil, are you here?
Yes. Let's go for.
Okay, sir. I think we'll stop here. So I think you can make a concluding remark, sir. Then we will.
Yeah, thank you so much for Professor Abdul Samad and the panel speakers and the participants and followers. This is really, the very stimulating and useful overview of the buffalo production in India, and then we got, some ideas what is going on in Bangladesh too. So I'm not going to repeat, that what he covered. Just to say that in the calf management for the 3 months is a very, very crucial. So we got to think about when we'll go for, the buffalo rearing in our country. So we should advise our farmers to look after, the calves for the first 3 months. And secondly, the stress management, particularly the heat and humidity management, is very, very important. Otherwise, that impact on production potential of the buffalo. There are many diseases, but comparing with the cows, the dairy cows, the disease burdens are less than that. The heat detection also challenging, and then egg consumption as well. So we got to do a lot of things on these. And he also emphasized on the data recording. It's very important. As I am an epidemiologist, I know how important it is. I mean, without data and data analysis, nothing will be possible to make in the policy decision. So what I'm going to suggest, Mijan, that based on the today discussion and presentations, better you produce some kind of handy documents and circulate to the different stakeholders. That would be very, very helpful for different stakeholders, particularly for the farmers and the field veterinarians. And another recommendation I would like to say that the projects and ongoing other projects that will be exploring the more information about buffalo production in our country. And then what the Professor Samsuddin and other people said, that we need to identify the two distinct value chains. The beef value chain is much more feasible in our contrast, and for the dairy value chains we need to have the international collaboration, and private people will come forward to do something better for milk production. And I also suggest that let's do some kind of meta-analysis. I mean, it's based on the past research, the findings, and then events. You can pick the information from the neighboring countries and produce something, and then discuss. And we also need to draw attention of our policymakers, because without their supports, it is quite impossible to put forward and make things happen. So with this, I would like to once again I would like to thank our key presenter and also the participant. And I think Semijan would like to complete and conclude our session for today. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Thank you very much. And once again, I'm sorry, because of me,
No, sir.
things started, half an hour late.
It is not a problem, because that people, many people, they have lots of queries. So what we will do, we will accumulate the questions. Those who are not answered, maybe we will pass it to you. You can answer some question.
Yeah, and I'll try to answer all the queries, which is
Very much.
okay.
So late.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And
Bye.
others for joining.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody.